Well, welcome and thank you for being with us today. My name is JJ Baham and I'm an Assistant Executive Officer at our Rancho Cordova office. We'll start our discussion with the Regional Board's mission, responsibilities and authorities as they pertain to water quality. My staff will then give a high-level description of the Mule Creek Watershed, including the wastewater features such as treatment plants, conveyance systems, and land application areas. These features are regulated by our board through various permits to ensure the conveyance, treatment, and disposal of wastewater does not impact water quality. Our office issues permits to wastewater facilities that contain requirements to ensure water quality is protected. Because of the variety of wastewater facilities we regulate, our office has several programs, each of which cover a different category or type of facility. Due to the many operations going on in the Mule Creek Watershed, several of these programs are part of our discussion. We will hear a bit about each type of permit from the folks that work in those programs, including the Land Disposal Program, the Municipal Stormwater Program, and the Sanitary Sewer System Program. Once we get through that background, we will hear from our Compliance and Enforcement section about some of the issues that have been occurring in the Mule Creek Watershed. And finally, we will present you with our progress tackling these issues so far and our plans going forward. After that, we will open up the floor to hear from you for a question and answer session. Keep in mind that this is a complicated watershed with a lot of interconnected facilities and moving parts. We have kept this presentation high level to provide digestible but meaningful overview of the complete situation that won't take all night. However, if you would like to have a more detailed discussion about any of these topics, staff would be happy to have those conversations with you and are available by phone or email. So why are we here today? Well, while we have some updates on our efforts we would like to share, there are no advisories or emergency concerns that are initiating this meeting. I'm a relatively new member of the team working on this watershed. Our experienced team members had received feedback asking for greater public engagement, and this is part of our response. Our overall goals for this meeting include providing an introduction to our agency through the work we do, discussing this complex watershed, encouraging better communication between those communities living in this watershed, provide an opportunity for the public to ask questions, and gather information for anticipated meeting in spring of 2022. Who is the Central Valley Regional Water Quality Control Board? There are 9 regional water quality control boards. The mission of the regional board is to develop and enforce water quality objectives and implementation plans that will best protect the state's waters, recognizing local differences in climate, topography, geology, and hydrology. And as you can see on the map on the screen, we're in Region 5 with the arrow pointing on the state of California. We are the largest regional water board in the state, encompassing 60,000 square miles or about 40% of the state's total area. We have 3 offices in Redding, Rancho Cordova, and Fresno. 38 of California's 58 counties are either completely or partially within the boundaries of the Central Valley Water Board. Wastewater regulatory oversight for Amador County and the Mule Creek Watershed is performed out of our Rancho Cordova office. So I'd like to state our Central Valley Board's mission statement: to preserve, enhance, and restore the quality of the Central Valley region's water resources for the protection of the environment, public health, and all beneficial uses for the benefit of present and future generations. So our agency is responsible for the implementation and enforcement for water quality regulations within our region. These include the Federal Clean Water Act through the issuance of National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permits that regulate discharges to surface waters. This is done in partnership with the United States Environmental Protection Agency, or US EPA. Additionally, we regulate discharges to surface and groundwater through the California Water Code, or Porter Cologne Act. Please note that our regional board does not regulate drinking water. That is done by the Division of Drinking Water through the State Water Board. We use many tools to effectively implement these regulations on surface and groundwater, including permits, establishing waste discharge requirements, and even issuing enforcement orders to those not meeting their discharge requirements. Several of these tools we will be discussing today and how they are used by our staff in the Mule Creek watershed. Additionally, we wanted to share some of the actions we have taken to protect and better understand the water quality in your watershed. Now, I'd like to welcome Kenny Croyle to give us an overview of the Mule Creek watershed.
Thanks, JJ. Hi, everyone. My name is Kenny Croyle, and I'm going to give you a little background on the local watershed around Mule Creek. Both Mule Creek and Sutter Creek flow through the Ione area. These creeks run west-southwest, eventually meeting up with Dry Creek, and then the McColmy River and the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta. Both of these creeks are seasonal and go dry during the summer months. Groundwater recharge occurs in the local watershed through percolation of treated wastewater or effluent from storage and disposal facilities. I'll give you a brief summary of these features and the facilities that contribute to groundwater recharge, and then show you how they're all interconnected on the next slide. There are two large unlined storage reservoirs at the Mule Creek State Prison. The Castle Oaks Golf Course has several smaller unlined storage ponds as well. The City of Ione wastewater plant also has two unlined ponds, which are operated as percolation basins. Land application areas used for the spray irrigation of effluent are located at Mule Creek State Prison property and at the City of Ione wastewater treatment plant. The Castle Oaks Golf Course also spray irrigates with tertiary treated effluent, which we will talk about more in a minute. Residential landscape irrigation in the neighborhoods also contributes to groundwater recharge. In the lower right-hand corner, the City of Ione treatment plant receives wastewater from the city sewer system and sometimes Preston Reservoir, which it treats and then disposes of on its own percolation ponds or on-site spray fields. In the upper right corner, the City of Sutter Creek sends treated wastewater through the ARSA conveyance system to Preston Reservoir. From there, the effluent can be either sent to the City of Ione plant or the tertiary plant for further treatment. In the lower left corner, the Ione tertiary plant receives already treated wastewater from Preston Reservoir or the prison for further treatment and eventual reuse on the Castle Oaks Golf Course. Tertiary treated water can be used to irrigate public spaces such as golf courses under certain conditions. As you can see, these facilities are all connected, but not all of these connections are active all of the time. Water is intermittently transferred between the facilities based on agreements between the parties, usually during the summer months to reduce volume of stored effluent in the reservoirs and to irrigate the golf course. Now I'm going to hand it off to Scott Armstrong to talk to you a little bit about the permits that regulate the wastewater operations at these facilities.
Thank you, Kenny, and good evening. My name is Scott Armstrong. I am a senior engineering geologist and manager of the Waste Discharge to Land Permitting Unit here in the Central Valley Water Board. In the next few slides, I'm going to summarize this program and provide a status of our permitting activities for the wastewater facilities discussed during this presentation. The Waste Discharge to Land Permitting Program regulates the land application of treated wastewater and waste solids to protect groundwater, which is considered a beneficial resource. This is achieved by developing and issuing permits that allow land disposal or the reuse of waste products in a manner that does not negatively impact groundwater quality. Permittees include sewage treatment and wastewater recycling facilities, food processors, sand and gravel operations, and other industries that generate non-hazardous waste. This program currently regulates over 1,400 facilities in the Central Valley. One of the priorities of the Water Board is to protect water resources here in the Central Valley. Thus, discharging some waste types to land is allowed to support water conservation efforts, provide supplemental irrigation, and reduce overloading of local landfills. For example, treated wastewater that meets stringent regulatory standards can be recycled to provide landscape irrigation for highways, parks, and golf courses. As Kenny previously mentioned, the Ione area includes several wastewater treatment facilities that discharge treated wastewater to land. These include the Mule Creek State Prison Wastewater Treatment Plant, the City of Ione Tertiary Treatment Plant, the City of Ione Wastewater Treatment Facility, and the City of Sutter Creek Wastewater Treatment Plant, which is managed by the Amador Regional Sanitation Authority, also called ARSA. I want to take a moment here to explain the terminology we use for these different levels of wastewater treatment. Secondary treatment utilizes biological and physical methods to break down organic compounds. Tertiary treatment includes those processes in addition to filtration to further reduce residual waste components to achieve better water quality. Disinfection is then applied to destroy pathogens and remaining organic compounds, including viruses. Title 22 of the California Code of Regulations defines ways that recycled water can be used, depending on the level of treatment. The permit mechanism that allows waste discharge to land is called Waste Discharge Requirements, or WDRs. The WDRs require that all waste applied to land meet specific treatment standards and comply with allowable limits that are protective of groundwater. These requirements include treatment levels that must be achieved and limits on the volume of water that can be discharged to prevent flooding or overloading of soils. Other protective measures include restrictions on nuisance odors and setback requirements from property boundaries, domestic water wells, and surface water, such as creeks. All WDRs include what's called a monitoring and reporting program, or MRP, that is used to verify compliance with the requirements set forth in the permit. The MRP includes requirements for routine sampling at various stages in the treatment and disposal process, laboratory testing, and reporting of the results to the Central Valley Water Board for permit compliance confirmation. The MRP also requires routine visual inspections of treatment and land discharge activities. All WDRs need to be periodically updated to accommodate changes in treatment facility operations and new regulatory requirements. The permitting process typically begins with the owner of a wastewater treatment facility preparing a report of waste discharge. This document summarizes information about the waste character, the type of treatment at the facility, the expected annual flow, and how the treated waste will be discharged to land without negatively impacting groundwater or creating nuisance conditions. Permitting staff review this document along with all relevant monitoring data to develop a draft permit. Once prepared, the draft permit is reviewed by Water Board management before being made available for public review. After all comments have been collected and evaluated, the permit is updated to reflect any appropriate revisions and presented to our board for their consideration and formal adoption during a public meeting. Permit development is a deliberative process that must address all applicable requirements, stakeholder concerns, and ensure that compliance can be reasonably achieved. The typical process time for preparing new or revised WDRs can vary depending on the backlog of other permits, project complexity, and staff availability. Prioritization for updating and preparing new permits is based on the threat to water quality. So where are we at currently with the permitting process? In October 2021, revised monitoring and reporting programs were issued for Mule Creek State Prison Wastewater Treatment Plant and the City of Ione Tertiary Treatment Plant, which includes the Castle Oaks Golf Course. The purpose of revising these monitoring requirements is to collect more comprehensive data in advance of updating the WDRs for these two facilities. In the coming months, the additional monitoring data will be reviewed by staff to determine the appropriate requirements and limits for the protection of groundwater quality. Water Board staff are also currently reviewing a report of waste discharge recently submitted for the Mule Creek State Prison. The complicated relationship between Mule Creek State Prison, the City of Ione, and the Amador Regional Sanitation Authority requires careful coordination by the Central Valley Water Board to assure that all Ione area communities have reliable wastewater disposal that does not negatively impact groundwater. This concludes my portion of this evening's presentation. And from here, I'd like to transition over to Elizabeth Lee, who will discuss the municipal stormwater system.
Thank you, Scott, and good evening, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Lee, and I am a senior engineering specialist working in the Central Valley Water Board's Rancho Cordova office. In this presentation, I will cover a little background on the stormwater program, specifically the municipal stormwater program area, how stormwater regulation is important to protect water quality in Mule Creek, the status of the implementation of the stormwater program by the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, or CDCR for short, and what regional water board staff are doing to ensure compliance. So just a bit of background on the municipal stormwater program. The purpose of the program is to protect water bodies such as Mule Creek by minimizing impacts from stormwater systems. In 2019, the regional board required CDCR to obtain a stormwater permit from the State Water Board due to evidence that CDCR's activities were impacting Mule Creek. The stormwater permit is an important tool because it has specific requirements for CDCR to reduce the stormwater impacts to Mule Creek, and it provides clear regional board enforcement authority to ensure the necessary improvements to the facilities and processes are completed by CDCR. The stormwater permit is a 5-year process to establish a full stormwater program, and CDCR is currently in their 4th year of stormwater program development. Monitoring is not required under the stormwater permit, but due to concerns of stormwater impacts to Mule Creek while the stormwater program is in the process of being developed, the regional board issued a stormwater monitoring and reporting program to CDCR. This program requires monitoring of bacteria and other contaminants from CDCR's stormwater and in Mule Creek. In addition, this program is used to evaluate CDCR's progress by providing data that shows stormwater quality improvement from the prison. So far, the program has resulted in CDCR determining the need for permanent structures to obtain accurate monitoring data and reducing excessive irrigation runoff during the dry season. Monitoring data are submitted to the regional board quarterly and are available to the public. The data are reviewed by regional board staff to verify accuracy and that CDCR's stormwater program is effective. The data is also used to identify any issues with their stormwater program. Moving forward under the stormwater permit, CDCR will annually report on the implementation and improvements made to their stormwater program, and regional board staff will review these reports to ensure that the stormwater program is being properly implemented. By June 30, 2023, CDCR must have a fully developed stormwater program in place. Under the Stormwater Monitoring and Reporting Program, quarterly verification of CDCR's stormwater program effectiveness will be reviewed by regional board staff. If the Stormwater Monitoring and Reporting Program does not demonstrate reduction in contaminants from the storm sewer system, CDCR will be required to develop and implement additional practices and processes and installation of storm sewer structural improvements. Now I'd like to introduce Carrie Holmes. Carrie?
Thank you, Liz, and good evening, everyone. My name is Carrie Holmes, and I'm the Compliance and Enforcement Program Manager for the Central Valley Regional Board. I'm going to be discussing Mule Creek State Prison sanitary sewer system and enforcement efforts to ensure compliance with all state and regional board regulatory requirements. The Sanitary Sewer System General Order is adopted by the State Water Resources Control Board, not the Regional Board. The State Water Board adopted the current permit in 2006 and a revised monitoring and reporting program to accompany that permit in 2013. The State Board is currently in the process of renewing the sanitary sewer permit. The Sanitary Sewer Overflow Reduction Program prohibits discharges to waters of the United States per the Clean Water Act. Therefore, any discharge from a sanitary sewer collection system to a surface water is a violation, which is known as a Category 1 spill. Dischargers enrolled in the Sewer System General Order are required to develop and implement a sanitary sewer management plan, perform critical system operation and maintenance, and publicly report spills from collection systems. Spills from collection systems are reported both to the Office of Emergency Services as well as the Water Board's California Integrated Water Quality System database. Central Valley Regional Board enforcement staff are currently working to assess CDCR's compliance with the Sanitary Sewer System General Order. We are assessing compliance to ensure an adequate sanitary sewer management plan, which includes an operation and maintenance program, overflow emergency response plan, and system evaluation and capacity assurance plan, is in place, and that all facility staff have the appropriate training. Board staff are also gathering information regarding the prison's spill history and records of maintenance and repairs of their sanitary sewer collection system. Now I will discuss compliance and enforcement efforts that have been taken, as well as ongoing compliance evaluations and next steps. On December 28th of 2017, board staff received a complaint via phone call regarding an alleged illegal discharge of water from an unknown source directly into the perimeter stormwater system and subsequently entering Mule Creek. The complaint was from a third-party construction contractor who is completing a project to upgrade the perimeter stormwater ditch to an underground culvert and vault system. The complainant observed discharges of varied flow and quality occurring consistently since when they began work in August of 2017. The complainant provided the regional board with photos and videos of the discharge. The photo in the upper left-hand corner of the slide shows the discharge, which varied between clear and jet black, sometimes with solids and sometimes elevated temperatures. Based on the complaint and supporting documents, board staff believe the source or sources may have contained non-stormwater flows. Regional board staff were able to conduct an inspection on January 4th, 2018. During the inspection, board staff observed discharges to the perimeter system similar to what was described in the complaint. Board staff collected 2 samples from the stormwater system, which were analyzed for typical wastewater and stormwater parameters. Notably, total coliforms, fecal coliforms, and E. coli were detected at levels above water quality objectives. As a result of the detected coliform, CDCR was instructed to cease the discharge via email on January 18, 2018. CDCR responded stating they would cease the discharge and reroute the contaminated stormwater to sewer cleanouts that lead to the on-site domestic wastewater treatment plant. In addition, the regional board issued an investigative order on February 14, 2018, that required CDCR to conduct a survey of their collection systems, also to collect water samples and investigate the source of the non-storm water discharges. Board staff performed several inspections between February and October of 2018 to determine if the facility was adequately prepared for forecasted rain events and how the interim measures performed during the wet weather. The main collection basin is shown here on the left. The slide gates in the foreground of the stormwater collection basins had been closed, preventing discharge to Mule Creek. CDCR staff had installed float pumps to pump out stormwater to nearby sewer laterals. Board staff again inspected the interim disposal measures as shown in the middle photo. Although the pumps were working, flooding was still occurring. Lastly, the 2 photos on the right-hand side show some of the ponded stormwater on adjacent fields off property. As many of you are aware, the board adopted a settlement on February 18, 2021 against CDCR for $2.5 million for unpermitted discharges to Mule Creek between January 2018 and April 2019 when MS4 enrollment occurred. The proposed order stipulates to $2.5 million in total penalties, with approximately $1.6 million of penalties paid to the state board's cleanup and abatement account, and $900,000 was suspended in lieu of completion of 2 enhanced compliance actions. The first enhanced compliance action is a project that will replace the landscape irrigation system at Mule Creek State Prison, which has exceeded its useful life. The existing system has breaches in several main lines, resulting in non-stormwater flow entering the prison's stormwater collection system, which may eventually discharge into Mule Creek. Installing new piping for the landscape irrigation system will have the effect of eliminating non-stormwater flows resulting from irrigation into Mule Creek. The second enhanced compliance action was a study to characterize the microbiological quality of the prison stormwater collection system discharges conducted by the Southern California Coastal Water Research Project. Ultimately, the results of this study showed the main sources of coliform in Mule Creek stemmed from mostly avian and deer waste. However, human waste markers were also identified in Mule Creek, but to a much lesser extent. This settlement only addresses discharge violations prior to obtaining coverage under the MS4 permit and is the first step in the regional board's process of bringing CDCR into compliance with their water board permits. The settlement is not intended to be a regulatory mechanism by which corrective actions will be required. As such, the regional board has formed an internal strategic work group comprised of representatives from all applicable programs to address ongoing compliance issues, which will include corrective actions as needed. The regional board, state board, and US EPA are collaborating across multiple programs as we are continuing to meet and identify next steps. So what steps has the regional board taken aimed at ensuring compliance with wastewater quality in the Ione area? As you've heard already from regional board staff, compliance actions and water quality monitoring are still ongoing under several water board programs. The stormwater program has enrolled CDCR's Mule Creek State Prison in the municipal stormwater permit, issued an order requiring additional monitoring and reporting, and is currently reviewing the non-stormwater discharge report and elimination plan submitted by CDCR in February and September of this year. As for wastewater, our permitting group has received CDCR's report of waste discharge for renewing the prison's WDRS and issued revised monitoring and reporting programs for the City of Ione and CDCR. Lastly, board staff issued multiple orders in response to the prison's unpermitted discharges, which ultimately ended with a $2.5 million settlement. So what's next? CDCR is currently constructing outfall monitoring structures to comply with regional board stormwater orders. They're developing a stormwater program, and they'll be completing the irrigation system improvements as allowed by the settlement agreement. In addition, waste discharge requirements regulating discharges from the Ione area wastewater facilities are scheduled to be renewed in the near term, which is intended to address potential groundwater impacts from land application areas, better understand industrial waste streams, evaluate potential industrial waste constituents from the Ione area wastewater treatment plant, and address insufficiently sized and maintained spray fields. You've also heard me talk about board staff currently working to assess the prison's compliance with the Sanitary Sewer System General Order, where an ongoing evaluation is underway. As you can see, our strategic work group has a lot of ongoing efforts we are actively engaged in to ensure water quality is protected and safe in your community. This will wrap up the presentation, and now I'm going to pass it back to Elizabeth to discuss how we will proceed with questions and answers. Thank you.